Hello and welcome to another AIC video. I'm really excited for today's video. This is a follow-up to one I did just last week. And just off the bat, this video is not sponsored by anybody. However, Lenovo, being the absolutely amazing people they are, did go ahead and send me this laptop for review. I do have to send it back when I'm done. So I can produce this video and get you guys some hopefully more exciting content. So as I stated in my last video, this is a Lenovo Legion Slim 7. It comes with an AMD processor, NVIDIA graphics, and is a beast of a machine. This system on my right, your left, is my Lenovo Legion 7 with an Intel processor and an RTX NVIDIA GPU. So very much powerhouses, kind of approaching that desktop replacement system, both in compute and GPU performance, as well as overall size of the system, and definitely competitors of each other within that same marketplace. All right, so first and foremost, I want to go around the outside of the two machines, kind of compare them to each other. As the name implies, the Slim is exactly that, is a slimmed down version of the Legion 7 line. And you can tell that when they sit next to each other, there's some significant height difference between the two. Let me flip this around so they're back to back. A little bit more obvious there. So along the back deck, not as much. The lid's a little bit lower, but the hinge makes a big difference as well. With that hinge, one thing I noticed when sliding it in and out of my bag, things like this hinge does tend to catch on things a little bit. Without that big hinge sticking up, definitely it seems to be a little bit more portable and bag friendly. These are fairly large laptops, so getting them into a bag, if you have a smaller backpack, can be, I shouldn't say a challenge, but it doesn't just slide in as easily as a smaller notebook would. The hinge definitely makes a difference on that. As far as looks go, the Slim is definitely a more sleek design. We have more rounded corners. The vents are a lot more streamlined, more rounded. Just more of a sleek overall design. Kind of taking back some of that gamerishness of it and making it, I don't want to say more traditional laptop, but definitely a more subdued look, I think, to it, while still looking high-end and fancy. As far as the screen goes, they both have very thin bezels around the screen. They both have this little bump up here where the camera goes. I really like this overall look because it gives you that webcam and the space for a webcam while still giving you a nice thin bezel around the screen. I think that's really smart of them to do. And it doesn't create a notch in some laptops that we are now on the market in the screen itself, and gives it a nice aesthetic. One thing I will say is the black overall is a much bigger fingerprint magnet, at least for me, than the silver. Now, one big difference that the two systems have between each other is the number of ports. So one of the reasons why I bought my Legion 7 is it has a ton of ports on it. That's one thing that a lot of modern laptops are getting away from, is having ports on the system. This has it all. It has USB Type-C, USB Type-A, gigabit Ethernet. It has DisplayPort on there, or not DisplayPort, it has HDMI on there. So I have all the ports that I would typically need on a system, and I don't need a dongle, I don't need an adapter. I can go ahead and plug things in and go. The one thing it's lacking that I wish it did have was an SD card reader. We come over to the Slim, and on this side we have just an SD card reader and a headphone microphone jack. On the back we have the charging and just two full-size USB ports. And on the side here, we just have two USB Type-C ports. So we actually are missing a lot on this laptop. There's no network port, there's no HDMI. So, unless you have adapters already, you're gonna have to pick up an adapter if you want to plug this in to like your television. I know a lot more modern monitors and things like that have USB Type-C connectors on there. If you're buying something net new, you can shop for that option. But the fact that this doesn't have what I consider a fairly common standard one that you find even on $150 laptops of that HDMI port. Kind of disappointing, to be honest. That the SD card slot is definitely a bonus, because that is something I do use and I wish that this did have, but lacking some of those other ports is not really acceptable to me. One thing's on these systems, go ahead and close them, is the fan noise. Being that this is a much thinner and smaller profile system, but the same system as this, I was expecting them to actually have more similar of a cooling setup. I showed that in my last system, where the cooling system is different between the two, though the cooling vents on the bottom are both large and in charge. The fan noise on the Slim, at least to my ear, and this may be subjective, but to my ear, this definitely has a more high-pitched whine to it, where the Legion has more of a whoosh noise. Now, when they're in performance mode or you're gaming or pushing these systems in any way, shape, or form, they're both loud. There's no questioning it. These are not quiet laptops. You're not going to want to take these in and boot up something in the middle of a classroom. They're not quiet. No, they're both pretty loud. But this one has a high-pitched whine that I'm not a fan of, and I just don't hear it on my Legion 7. All right, so now we get to the keyboard. And the keyboard on these, as far as I can tell, are exactly the same. In fact, it looks like they even have the same color keycaps between the two systems. The key arrangement is the same. The feel of the tactile feel of the keys is the same. I can't tell a difference between the two keyboards. It's a fine keyboard, not my favorite. Like I've said many times before, I am an absolute ThinkPad aficionado, fanboy, if you will. But between the two, as identical as they can be, and the more I use it, the more I get used to it, and it's pretty good. It's all right. I don't mind typing on it. I've definitely been pushing myself to use this one more. I typed this whole script on this laptop, and it is perfectly acceptable for a keyboard. I've mentioned my gripes about the keyboard in the video about this laptop specifically, as far as like the number pad, things like that, but just use of it, fine. Now, below the keyboard, we have touchpad, and as you can see on the Slim 7, it is definitely a larger touchpad than on the Legion 7. So they're the same touchpad as far as I can tell. Again, same driver, same everything, just more of it being a bigger touchpad, and that's a good thing. That's one thing I wish this had, was a slightly larger touchpad, and the Slim 7 has it. So not a bad thing to have that bigger touchpad. All right, as far as RGB goes, on the Slim, it's only in the keyboard. It's nice and bright, easy to see, very clear, all the fun colors, but it is limited to just the keyboard. There's no RGB in the vent. The logo has no RGB, though it does have this nice shimmery effect to it here and on the logo there, but no RGB. The 7, on the other hand, in addition to it having on the keyboard, the vents light up. It also has this ring around the bottom edge, and the logo logo lights up. So if you're looking for RGB, and that's your main purchasing reason, the Legion 7 is the way you want to go, or the 7i, not the Slim. So more RGB on the 7. Now, that being said, I just use the default settings, and I uninstalled iQ. I've tried the latest version of iQ, and it is trash. The biggest problem I have is that it just stops. It just stops working. And so whatever pattern I've picked, they'll just won't do anymore. And the only way to fix it is to reboot the whole system. I know that's probably not a big deal for most people, but I like to work a lot of times in the dark, some things like that. I like the lighting. This is not my typical lighting I pick. I just do this for the video because it's flashy. But I need to be able to see my keys when it's a little bit darker, and just having this, having the iQ software just crash and freeze the RGB, not cool. I don't like it. I know Lenovo's coming out with a new software for their newer generations of systems, and I really hope it's backwards compatible and actually functions on it. So that's one disappointment I have, is I wish that either iQ worked, because it's a fine application. I have iQ for other devices I've owned that have RGB from Corsair. And so I don't have a problem with the application. It just doesn't work on these computers. And I've tried the version from Lenovo's website. I've downloaded IQ directly from Corsair. None of it works. All breaks, and it all breaks in the same way. So the next thing I want to talk about is the sound quality on these systems. Being kind of a desktop replacement, my hope with these systems is that they'd have pretty good speaker quality, so that way I don't have to hook up external speakers to it. And with my Legion 7, that is absolutely the case. They're loud enough that when my AC kicks on, when I have a phone call coming in, whatever, these definitely overpower whatever external noises from an office, airplane flying overhead, things like that. Have no problem being drowned out by speakers on my Legion 7. On the Slim, however, even though if you watched my hardware video where it showed the internals, this grill of the speaker is about the same size, or the actual membrane speaker. They are quiet, like significantly so. And they're not quieter with better sound quality, they're just quieter. And even at max volume, it's very easy to drown them out. I have to either get headphones or connect up to external speakers if my AC kicks on, anything like that. So that's one area I'm definitely disappointed with the Slim 7. That speaker quality is not so great. Now it sounds fine, like the audio quality is fine, it just is very easily drowned out by other noises and is just very quiet. Now, as far as temps when using the machines, I did a lot of testing with this, and I will admit it's kind of hard for me to quantify this because I don't have like a thermal imaging camera or anything like that. But really, they output about the same amount of heat. They both get warm-ish on the keyboard and the palm rest, but neither of them gets uncomfortable. Even underneath the laptop, they move so much air that they don't really get hot. And so I would say that heat's not really an issue with them if they can get enough airflow under them. So one thing I do is when I'm doing anything that's pushing the system is I just have a wrist rest that I throw under the back of the machine to lift it up a touch. And this has a pretty good effect on fan noise. I noticed that the fans don't have to spin quite as much. The temps still get up there, but they, knocks off a degree or two on max temps. And also just puts up the laptop up at a more convenient angle for my wrist when typing. So this is something I do. I don't think it's necessarily required to do. You definitely don't want to do anything that blocks the air vents on the bottom of the laptop from being able to draw in air. So, but propping up just a little bit helps. They do pull in a lot of air. You don't want to be setting these on a soft surface like a bed or even on your lap per se when you're really pushing them. It's fine if you have it in cool and quiet and you're watching YouTube videos or whatever, but if you're gaming, you're going to want something underneath it that is hard, that supports it. Now, both systems did reach their max clock speeds. So the AMD hit 4.4 gigahertz and the Intel did reach the 5 gigahertz speeds with the fans going full blast with plenty of air flowing into them. So pretty okay. But yeah, they definitely do generate heat and have a lot of fan noise when you're pushing them. Now, I did cover this in my previous video, but so I'll just go through this super quick. When I opened it up and showed the internals, I was surprised, like I said previously in this video, that the cooling systems on these are a little bit different. The AMD has more heat pipes, but it has a little bit of vapor chamber. The Intel has more vapor chamber, less heat pipes, but still has some heat pipes. Fans, a little bit wider, thicker on the Intel on the Legion 7 versus the Slim. So a little bit different cooling setup. Both have two M.2 slots for upgrades. Mine just happens to have both of those populated with 1 terabyte drives. That's the way it came. And this one happens just to have one 556 gig, or excuse me, 512 gig SSD in there. So it has an available upgrade slot. The main big difference between these two is the RAM options. So with the Slim, you can either get from Lenovo on their website that I checked, what this has, which is 8 gig soldered and an 8 gig replaceable DIMM, or 16 gig soldered with a 16 gig replaceable DIMM. Honestly, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So on my Legion 7, it has 2 replaceable DIMM slots, which means I can upgrade to whatever current capacity there is. With the Slim, especially being that it's an AMD processor, it does have fairly quick 3200 megahertz RAM, but it is limited to that because that is the speed of the soldered memory. You can't make that go faster. You can't increase its speed. So you can upgrade that other DIMM and it will still run in dual channel, but still only up to 16 gigs split across the two. Once you go above that, it will drop down to single channel mode and your performance will take a hit. So if you're adding that RAM because you need more RAM and you need that performance of the RAM, you're going to lose that performance of the RAM by adding more RAM and then utilizing it. It's just an interesting configuration for me that I'm not thrilled with. If you're going to solder half the RAM, solder all the RAM. You know, have dual channel RAM soldered to the board, have it be thinner and lighter, possibly, maybe even be cheaper, and not have to have the upgradable slot, which I don't know. It doesn't make sense. This option makes more sense to me, having both RAM slots upgradable, especially if this had been an AMD, and I could purchase faster memory, get myself some better performance, increase my capacity, whatever I want to do, I can do that with this system because both slots are available for me to upgrade. Not quite sure on this one. With it being a performance and enthusiast oriented device, I would have expected that to be both RAM slots upgradable. Now, as far as raw CPU performance, the AMD is a clear winner. There's no contest. It has 2 more cores, 4 more threads. It's a generation newer. AMD's been kicking Intel's butt from the 5th generation to the 12th generation. I think Intel's finally gained some ground back. So a 5th generation Ryzen crushes a 10th generation Intel Core i7. No way surprised there. However, in day-to-day use and day-to-day tasks, I can't really tell the difference between the two. They're both fast enough that day-to-day tasks barely even push the processor to any kind of limit. I even installed the least optimized video processor I know on there, or video editing software I know on there, Windows Movie Maker, and edited the exact same file. It's about a 1.5 gigabyte, 4-minute 4K video, and did the same edits, same everything, same effects, whatever, to the file, and the Intel was faster, even though it's a slower processor, because it was utilizing the graphics. On both of them were utilizing graphics, and this one just happens to have a GPU that's faster for video editing than this one does. So once you kind of get into these high-end systems, unless you have a very specific task that really utilizes that CPU, I think the vast majority of people aren't going to notice the difference between this CPU and this one. I don't think they're going to notice. There just isn't a big enough difference between the two, right? It's kind of like driving, I don't know, a Lamborghini and a Ferrari down a highway, down a freeway. You're speed limited to 65 miles an hour, right? So they're both super fast cars. They both can reach amazing top speeds. One's faster than the other, faster top speed, but you're never going to get there because you just aren't doing anything to push it to that limit for the vast majority of people. So I wouldn't be hung up too much on which CPU to get. Just get the one that overall meets your needs the best. So GPU performance is another one of those, yeah, okay, but situations, right? So the Slim has a 3060, RTX 3060. The Legion 7 has an RTX 2070 Super. So previous generation, but higher tier than this one. The thing that the Slim has, and I believe that all the Legion 7 I's have, which mine is not an I, it's just a Legion 7, is it has a MUX chip. What that means is when you switch from, or the system can switch to being a hybrid system where it uses the onboard graphics for low-end tasks, and then we'll switch to the dedicated GPU when doing high performance stuff like gaming. And you don't need to do a reboot, you don't need anything, and it's, you know, straight lines. You either are using the GPU on one or the other, and they have straight lines to the screen. My Legion, on the other hand, has a hybrid mode and a dedicated GPU mode. And the hybrid mode means that, kind of same thing, the system will use the integrated GPU for low-end tasks, surfing the web, watching YouTube, whatever, start a game up or whatever, and it will kick in that dedicated GPU. But it routes all of the performance of the graphics through that integrated GPU to the screen. What that means is that you get a performance hit, like a 15-20% performance hit on your graphics going through that integrated GPU. And so this, when I did performance tests on this, was slightly faster in 3D benchmarking than this system. But when I rebooted the system into dedicated GPU mode, it crushes this one in the graphics testing when this one is in GPU only mode. So put them both in, but this one doesn't need to reboot to do that. This one does. So that's something to consider. If I had been more aware of that, I might have picked an I version. Probably not, because I got such a good deal on this, but it would have made me at least pause and think about getting that I version or a Slim if I was doing a lot more competitive gaming, or just always leaving this in the dedicated GPU mode, because I really don't use it off power, wall power much, and just always having that higher performance available to me without the performance hit. This one isn't that big a deal. It just switches automatically, goes to the MUX, and has that direct access to the screen without the performance hit. So definitely a big bonus for the Slim. So as far as the screen, as I mentioned, they both have really nice thin bezels. They're both beautiful screens. The Legion has X-Rite to adjust the color on it. It's a 240 hertz display. And because of that ability to adjust the colors, I like this one a little bit more. I can get them to look the same, but I can adjust this one to where I think it looks better in games and things like that. Because of that, this one out of the box did not have any software to adjust the color on the screen. So if you do any kind of photo or video editing, things like that where color matters, you're either going to need maybe a third-party software. This comes with that software to adjust the screen color. All right, as far as weight goes, the Slim definitely is lighter. It's about not quite half a pound lighter than the Legion 7. And it is noticeable when you're holding the laptop by itself, but they're both pretty heavy. This is pushing 5 pounds, it's about a little under 4.5 pounds. And so they're both pretty heavy systems. You add in that power brick, which is a beast, and it kind of negates any weight savings between the two, having to carry that around. It weighs as much as some laptops do. But yes, this one is lighter by about half a pound or so. All right, so battery life. That's one thing that is definitely a big difference between these two. I asked in my last video if anybody had any thoughts at which would be the laptop with the better battery life, and one person suggested the Intel. Unfortunately, that's incorrect. The AMD is significantly better when it comes to battery life, despite having a smaller battery. So I did a battery test on these where I just did my normal daily workload. That includes things like browsing YouTube, browsing Reddit, remoting into systems for work, Facebook, whatever. It just normal everyday tasks, but did not include any gaming. Okay, so just normal workload kind of stuff that I do every day. And after about an hour, this was down to about 63%. This was down to like 82% or 81%. After 2 hours, this was down to 30%. This was down to 66%. After 3 hours, this was done and needed to be charged. And this one still had 40% battery life and could have easily gone at least another hour and a half to 2 hours without needing to be plugged in. The thing is, though, is I wonder how much of that comes down to the automatic settings built into the Slim versus the Legion. So the reason why I say that is when I take this off battery and put it in battery saver mode, it kills the screen. Like, it's almost unusable with how dim it is. So if you're not in a dark room, you're not going to want to put it in that mode. Where with the Legion, I put in, and I can't make it brighter. So it goes dim and I can't make it any brighter. The Legion 7, it dimmed it a bit, but not severely. Still able to use it with all the lights on here in my office. And I was able to make it brighter in that mode if I wanted to. It just dropped it down a little bit. So it really, I think I could have squeezed out more life out of this Legion 7 if I'd done a lot more just playing with the settings. But out of the box, the Slim is definitely a better battery life system. So 4 to 5 hours pretty easily with it. A solid 3-ish hours with the Legion 7. So again, I'm sure you can get better battery life if you go into your settings and do more to reduce the overall performance of the systems. But again, I just put it into battery saver in the cool quiet mode and went on with my day. So in the end, do I regret not getting the Slim? It's hard. This is a fantastic machine with a few upgrades, especially like the hinge, the slimness to the Legion 7. I think it looks a little bit smarter. I like the slightly larger touchpad. But there's just a couple of things that the Legion 7 has that's more important to me. The RAM that's upgradable for both slots, the additional ports with the Ethernet and the video out are just more important to me than a slightly sleeker design. So this still would be my buy from my personal use case. If you don't ever really see yourself needing to plug into an external display or willing to have a dongle with you for that, or you typically carry one with you anyways, if you never plug into Ethernet, things like that, this definitely has some great benefits for you, especially if you're more of a road warrior and you're carrying it around. Like I said, it goes in and out of backpacks a little bit easier. It is slightly lighter, and it is a very nice looking machine that looks a little bit more professional than the glowy boy over here with its crazy RGB. Anyways, I hope you liked the video. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day.